welcome once again to Let's Talk Marriage. This is Pastor Larry coming to you this Wednesday afternoon with Let's Talk Marriage. All right. We're going to go right into our program on today. Hope everyone is doing well. If you woke up this morning, you are doing well. All right. We're going to get right into our program today. Today we're going to be talking about listening within your relationship or within your marriage. We've talked about it before on the program a couple times last year. We're just going to pick back up on talking about listening because it's a art that's underrated. It's very underrated. Listening in a relationship because that's what sets the pace for a beautiful relationship or a wonderful relationship or a successful relationship when you learn to listen to your spouse. And a lot of times us as husbands, we don't really listen to our wives because a lot of times we consider them as being nagging, bickering, or always complaining. But it's very important that we listen to our wives because most of the times they're saying something that's going to benefit us or benefit the family. So it's very important that we listen to our spouses. And another thing, when you listen to your spouse, your children notice that as well. So when they get in their relationships, or become of age to start getting into relationships, they'll be more open to listening to each other as couples, and that's very important. Now, even in us being Christians or whatever you are, it's very important to listen as well in your religion. It's very important to be a great listener or a good listener or excellent listener. Even in your religion, when you go to church, you have to, in order to be a successful or faithful Christian, you have to learn to listen. And that's the same thing that applies in our relationships as a husband and wife. We have to learn to listen to each other. And it's a forgotten art of listening. It's very important. And it helps you in all walks of life because if you learn to listen, you learn to be more obedient. And when you learn to listen to the Word of God, we become more obedient to that as well. So that's why it's very important to be listening to each other. Because sometimes when, our wives they go through a lot of things, they have a lot of things on their plate. Us as husbands, we as well, we have things on our plate. But our wives have, to me, they have much more on their plate because first of all, they're concerned about the household, the meals that are prepared. Most of the time are prepared by the wife. If you're fortunate enough to have a husband that cooks as well, that's a plus. But for the most part, the meals and things like that are set by the wife, and we have to make sure that we are appreciating each other and loving each other. And when you listen to a person, that does not mean that you're going to be talking while they're talking, because if both of you are talking at the same time, no one is listening. So you have to stop and listen to your spouse, to your wife. You have to learn to listen to her when she's voicing her opinion. Listen to her opinions. There's a lot of fellows out there that don't value their wife's opinion. Oh, she don't know what she's talking about. But a lot of times they do know what they're talking about. Most of the time, they know what they're talking about. So we have to learn to listen to because God gave them to us as helpmates. And when they're helpmates, they'll have their opinions on things, and a lot of times the things that they suggest is going to save us money, time, and a lot of frustration. Especially when you're on your way to somewhere, with GPS, it makes it a lot easier. But even with the GPS, sometimes you have to listen to your spouse because she might have went that route before, and we'll end up getting lost and making excuses for being lost. But it's kind of impossible now with the GPS, thank goodness. But we have to make sure that we are listening to each other. And it's very, very important because when you go to school, listening becomes important as well, because you can't learn if you don't listening. A part of learning is listening. The major part of learning is listening. And when you learn to listen, you react differently because you heard everything that's going on. A lot of fights and things that are caused in relationships are caused because someone wasn't listening or they weren't paying attention, and they misinterpret what was said because they weren't listening. And when you don't listen, it causes so many different disagreements, so many arguments, and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we are listening to our spouses. And another thing, listen to our children. Sometimes our children are telling us something because, again, that they go through a lot more things that we've never went through. And the things that they go through nowadays, they're going through school, and sometimes they're trying to tell us about it, and we're not listening. Oh, back in my day when I was coming up, yeah, it might have been true when we were coming up, but it's a whole different ball game today. Everything is so much different, so we have to learn to listen to our children as well. And when we become great listeners to our spouses, we learn to listen to our children as well because they have things that's on their heart, things they want to say. And when you learn to listen, you don't get things wrong, or you don't get misunderstood, or you don't misunderstood understand something that someone is saying to you if you are listening to them. And it's very important that we learn to listen. In the program we've talked about that many times, about listening and being listened to. And when we're listening, we can't talk while we're listening. We have to let the other person finish what they're saying, even if it takes forever. Let them finish what they're saying, and then you begin to speak. That's how you communicate. You go back and forth at separate interval times. You don't do it at the same time. So those are the things that we have to learn to do. And a lot of times it seems like it's hard, but it's not really hard. It's just a matter of holding your peace and waiting your turn. And you were taught that we were taught that all our lives coming up as kids to listen. Oh, you don't listen to it. Did you hear what I said? How many times you've heard your parents say that? Did you hear what I said? Because sometimes our mind be on one thing, and your parents are talking about another thing, but your mind is on going outside and playing, and they're trying to teach us valuable things or valuable points in life that's going to help us later on in life. They'll teach us how to become responsible adults as children. That's why we have to learn to listen to your parents as children. Learn to listen to your parents and your teachers. If you've been taught well, you'll know when someone is trying to teach you or tell you something that's not appropriate. If you've been taught well from listening, you will know when someone is saying something to you that is not appropriate. But we learn to listen, and when we learn to listen, that's a major part of becoming a faithful and dedicated Christian. Is learning to listen. You listen to what your pastor is saying. Because he's saying something, or he should be saying something that's going to help you in the long run and help you through this Christian walk. And as married couples, we have to bond together, like never before, because the enemy is coming against marriages so well, and marriages are not lasting like they used to, and people are walking away from marriages for the simplest things, because there was a lack of communication, and that is the major point in communication, is listening. And we have to learn to be better communicators in this world. And you never become an expert communicator or an expert listener. We learn to listen. That's part of listening, is learning. And when we learn to listen, there's things that we won't miss, because if you're not listening, you can miss a lot of things, and someone can get hurt. For instance, if you have directions, someone gives you directions, you don't follow those directions, you could very well put your life or someone else's life in danger. So that's another reason why we have to listen. Listen to our children. Listen to what's going on around us. We have to be very aware of our surroundings, and that's part of that, is listening to our surroundings. Listen to what's going on around you. and most of all, listen to what because when you become listeners of each other, when God speaks to you, you'll know that God speaking to you because you became a great or a better listener, and you're able to listen to what God is saying to you. And a lot of times we miss what God is saying to us because we're not listening. And a part of our faith is listening. We become great listeners of the Word of God, and doers of the Word of God as well. So we have to make sure that we are listening to each other. Is very important because our wives have so much to say. Because they have so much on their plate. The men's as well. Wives, you listen to your husbands as well. You listen to each other, and that's part of communication is listening to each other. Where you're going back and forth, listening to each other. You're planning out things in life, and that's one of the things that we talked about in the on the program as well. When you're contemplating on getting marriage, that conversation should be had about children, and you have to listen to each other when you're discussing having children before you get married or when you get married. We first get married. Listen to each other. If one of the spouse said they don't want children, listen to them. Trust me. Don't go having children and then get mad because he's upset because you're having kids. Make sure that that conversation is had because, first of all, children are very expensive. I mean, very expensive. Daycare, who's going to watch them, how you're going to go on vacations. You're not going to be able to go on vacations like you normally do, especially when the child is a baby, unless you go on a family vacation. If you want a romantic getaway, then you have to have someone to watch the kids, someone that's responsible, and those things should be discussed and should be listened to when you're talking about it, or when you before you walk down the aisle. Those things should be discussed. This is Pastor Larry. We are talking about listening. Until we meet again, first of all, we want to invite you out to our services at New Zion Christian Center. We're located at 15014 Plain Street in Plainfield, Illinois. Our services begin on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. And we hope to see you there in the place to see your face. All right, this is Pastor Larry. We're going to be signing off until we meet again with Let's Talk Marriage.